Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, well, people are still coming in, but we might as well get started because we have a long and big and lots of things to discuss. So good morning. We're here today having a conversation about MOOCs. I'm Hei Okimoto, Director of Academic Technologies for the University of Hawaii System. And actually, I wanted to pull this together, not because I know anything about MOOCs, but because I wanted to know whether we should get involved. So actually, if you can look at this list of presenters today, to save time, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves and their part in this conversation. Part of it is people who are going to kind of help define the MOOCs for us, not that we really need it, because as we know, let's see how this works. Let's see, I'll just go the old-fashioned way. Nothing is moving. All right. So basically what we're doing for this morning is that we are going to be talking about the MOOCs, the lessons learned from MOOCs, that from people who have actually done them. We'll have a quick break to have a student perspective of what it was like, even though, let's show of hands, how many of you have participated in a MOOC? Okay, keep those hands up. How many of you have completed a MOOC? Oh, I'm glad to see there's a lot that are still standing up. And then basically, you know, what we're going to be doing. Let's see if this works now. Okay, so none of it, just in 1 week, these were all the kinds of headlines in the Chronicle of Education and various journals. So therefore, it's still a thing that we're dealing with right now. But basically, part of the reason why I wanted to put this panel together is I went to our Board of Regents meeting and they said, oh, hey, when are we doing a MOOC? And I think, they're not that sure about why we should do it, what it should entail. And so this panel was put together so that I can go back and tell my Board of Regents why we should or should not do a MOOC. But to help us get started, we have Mike, who's going to give us the straight talk about MOOCs. That button.
That
Advance.
button. Okay, this is the advance button. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
All right, come on. Yeah, I already got my coffee. So, actually, last year with Dick Hiesel, I did a kind of a talk on some new things that are coming down the pike, and we ended up talking about MOOCs a lot last year. I don't. How many of you in here are done talking about MOOCs? Yeah. Okay. So, and here you are yet again in another session about MOOCs. Well, I want to tell you, MOOCs kind of get me grumpy, and initially did. So this is kind of how I learned to love a MOOC, kind of talk to get you started, and a couple of things that I think helped the conversation. But initially, I was going to be kind of snarky about this, and I've decided not to be. Because initially, I was going to point out that we're in the new age of enlightenment as we read, and that apparently this new field of distance learning has been discovered and is now a true capability. But I didn't want to get snarky about that because, and apparently we know nothing about quality or doing anything good online because we need a new group to really help us focus on quality. But I'm not going to get snarky, okay? I'm not going to do that. All right. So let me do my more erudite introduction. I kind of welcome you to the conversation because I think that's what this is really about. And that's when it really does become interesting. And I've had some colleagues that have really struggled with that. One of the things I was privileged to do last year, or actually earlier this year, was visit Georgia Tech and meet with the provost, Raphael Bross, and meet with the folks at Center for the 21st Century University, Rich DeMillo, Mike McCracken, and Paul Baker and the team there. And as you go across a campus, I've worked at a number of systems, the Council on Post-Secondary Ed in Kentucky, for the Georgia Board of Regents. And when you go onto a campus and you hear them all talking about the same things, with different discussions, some positive, some negative, but good discussions, and they're really thinking about change. Georgia Tech is doing that. The discussion, the conversation on MOOCs has energized that campus in ways that we haven't seen since back in the late 99, 2000, 2003, when you could invent anything kind of time. And that's a neat thing that MOOCs have done. One of the things I've been consulting for Georgia over the last couple months, and one of the things they have done is brought together a number of multi-institutional systems from across the country. This is the initial group, but this has been growing to talk about how MOOCs fit in. And it's interesting to me because MOOCs fit in with systems in a different way than they do with institutions. Because they're very horizontal. They don't respect boundaries between states or between institutions, and they provide some interesting and unique opportunities for systems to think about how you might use MOOCs. And I think that's where it begins to get interesting. So what I want to do, this is to MOOC or not to moo. I think that's, it was ook at the end, but that's what happens when your fonts change. What happens with this is you get into a lot of conversations and a lot of confusion. So I just wanted to talk about at least my one way of sorting out some conversations and thinking through this to help folks argue about the right things, because we do argue about these, but I think sometimes we're at cross purposes. So the first MOOC back in about 2008 was the CMOOC, the connected MOOC. And we got that from the great guys who put this together. How many people were participating in what? Okay, see, this is the kind of stuff that got us started. This was really about building a collegial connection, getting together. And it was really something that was kind of informal, if you think about it. I mean, there was some structure and things, but a lot of it kind of emerged. It was very emergent out of it. And it was based on Stephen Downes' kind of theories and ideas about scalability. And it really showed that we could do some interesting things. This was kind of crowdsourcing at the time, really kind of crowd sharing, if you think about it. And it was that kind of an opportunity that really brought it together. What began to differentiate this, though, was the idea of, well, could we get a credential for this? How do we know we participated? Is this really something? And one of the things, I mean, this was connecting people together, but the next thing we got was something where people were maybe a little more committed to it, and something where people were trying to extend that out, that scalability and that concept. So we got the XMOOC, the extended MOOC. And that was for folks who were maybe a little bit more committed. And as you know, we've had discussions now on this. These were kind of the real idea where courses came into being. And we had the, ACE reviews, we have certificates, we have badges, things we've talked about there. So one of the dimensions that I think kind of differentiate things a little bit here is that connection. There's a connection that's collegial. We're in this as a group, and we're learning something from it. And then there is, well, we're a little more committed. We want to get something back from that idea of this course. Then we began to see also a little more formality beginning to come into that. Because now you enroll in it, and there's more almost assignments and things like that. These are some things, this is an area that hasn't developed as much, but is also having conversations at professional development, where maybe you get, professional development units, continuing ed units, something like that out of it. Still, not heading towards the Holy Grail, but this is a little bit more formal and useful. So as we know, the next thing is really the online degree area. This is where you're really committed. In fact, you're enrolled, probably matriculated in this, and it's very formal. You're going to get grades. We're going to worry about who took the test and things like that. And so to me, the challenge becomes when people begin arguing back and forth, and most faculty, I said when last year I was working with Straighter Line, and when these things first came out, I mean, we felt at Straighter Line that people are going to be pushed to do rational things, not MOOCs, and use Straighter Line courses and things like that to try and provide opportunities. But it turned out MOOCs were like technology's gift to a college president. Because if you had a board that said, hey, we want to be out on the forefront. Why aren't we doing MOOCs? And if you were at University of Virginia, you were supposed to pay attention to them because they they let you go if you didn't. You could say, hey, no problem, we're doing MOOCs. And they go, yeah, it's cool. And the faculty go, what's a MOOC? And so, oh, it's a thing, it's no credit, we just offer it's free. And they go, oh, cool, have fun. And then you start talking about credit, and all of a sudden, you have a group of people who want to talk to you about that on your campus. And that's where the challenge is coming in. And that's where faculty are really concerned about this, as they should be, because it's their job to be attentive to those kind of things. What we really get now is this idea, and that's up market with the font kind of smooshed around. But this is what we've got. If you're a disruptionist of the Clay Christensen variety, you know that things are always trying to move up market, and that's where XMOOCs are trying to go. And that's what makes this a really interesting conversation. This is what gets the faculty really interested in talking about MOOCs. Thank you for appreciating that. This is not the Georgia Tech faculty. These are another Georgia institution which shall remain unnamed. But it really gets us into what I kind of think of as the hot zone. Okay, that's where the conversation. And so it's important when we have these, because if we're doing something that's an XMOOC, that we're really putting it out there, and maybe there's going to be a path to a credential, maybe there's not. This becomes something that gets confusing when you're talking about something that you're really trying to develop that's going to be a credit-bearing course, and you want real students to be in that. And it changes the way we think about things. So I think those are important distinctions, the connection you're going to have to it and the credential that you're going to get out of that, and whether you get a credential. I'll just kind of wrap up my part and kind of setting the stage for what we want to talk today. I'm working right now on a pre-calculus course that is kind of a virtualized math emporium model that would be offered on Coursera in January. So I've got some starting experience with MOOCs. I'm here to learn a lot more about them as well. How many people went to the Pioneer session yesterday? I think one of the things that reminded us, if you haven't read Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, you need to, because that's what we're about. A lot of wisdom in there. The talk about lattice. Institutions are the new lattice that we're trying to deal with. ITFS, it's become the internet. Now we're in MOOCs. We got all this stuff going on. These are the same conversations going on over again. The neat thing about MOOCs is they've opened it up. Massive, open, online courses. Now, there are other folks who've come up with other kind of names for these. There's the special purpose online course. You all like that one, the SPOC? Okay. My personal favorite is from Barry Dahl, the massive, open, online social experiment. Yeah, he's in Minnesota, close to Canada. They think those things up there. Okay. I think it's probably the massive, open, online conversation that we're in. And that's really what it is. I'm happier about that. So on behalf of me and all of the great people who are going to tell you neat things, welcome to the conversation. I don't know how to go back. There.
Okay. So yeah, let's figure out how to get me in here next. Okay. Yeah, that's not working. Nope.
Honest, I didn't touch much of it.
Okay. Escape out?
Yep, escape.
Okay.
While we're shifting, does anyone have any questions for Mike? We can take one or none.
Why didn't you go to Burning
Man? Why didn't you go to Burning Man?
That's a very good question.
I gotta get, no, not yet.
I'll be having a discussion with sponsor session.
It's that one, so hopefully this does it.
I can, while you're setting that up, I can just say that, can you hear me okay? Okay. What Mike just said about opening up the conversation, this is a disruptive type of education that has opened up the conversation in a way that we've been needing for a really long time. In California, the governor wanted us to give credit to our community college students for MOOCs. He wanted to see how we could do that. And we had a conversation about credit and all that, and we said we couldn't. And but we could do other things, and now the state is giving a total of $56 million to us to work on distance ed. So it opened up the conversation.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm coming from a little different place when it comes to MOOCs. What happened with the Colorado Community College system was that we had a games and immersive learning grant. And what they wanted to do was to teach faculty about games and immersive learning. And so I think this happens with a lot of people who do MOOCs. I got a call from the assistant provost who asked me if I knew what a MOOC was. Okay, and I did, and I didn't even have to Google it. And that's just because I was in one of the early ones. And then said, would I consider doing one to teach our faculty about game-based learning? And it wasn't a real stretch. And I'll tell you some things. Like, you know how people have been throwing out, like, Spook and a couple of the other acronyms? Well, do you know where the term MOOC came from? Do you know what it's a play on? It's a play off of MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. The guy who originated the phrase and came up with the phrase MOOC was taking it off of gameplay online. So when I was asked to do a MOOC about games, it wasn't a real stretch. And that's really what I'm going to tell you guys about, because here's the deal of it. I haven't heard this a lot at this conference at all. I hear a lot about how there's some great self-directed learners here. And then I hear a lot, and we've been hearing about synchronous also. And synchronous looks very much like a talking head. And guess what? You get a text chat running on the side. Well, there's a lot happening every single night when it comes to the gaming community and what they're doing online. They get online, they go over voice, and they play with each other, and they constantly learn, talk to each other, and they do it for hours every single night in a way that you would love your online students to be doing this. And it's synchronous. So it means that they're doing it together. It's not self-directed. It's not somebody just, going in there and working 6 or 8 hours by themselves. And so we'll get started going on this. So our MOOC didn't turn out to be that big. And in fact, one of the people in it said that for our MOOC, that M was for modest and C was for community. And these were our numbers. So this is how many educators we ended up having, and the number of visitors, number of page views. Now, we're running it for the 5th time now. So we've run 4 iterations, and we're on our 5th iteration right now. And this is one of the tweets that we had about it. And it was somebody comparing us to a Coursera course. And the first thing we do when somebody comes on is we tell them that this course is not like a Coursera course, that it will not look like it, and it won't feel like a Coursera course. And if they're looking for that they're going to be they're going to end up being really disappointed, because it's not about us going 6 to 8 weeks, everything perfectly out there, and having 3 to 5 minute videos, and then you have a test that's going to be graded by AI. Instead, ours was a connectivist MOOC. Okay, we made it into the new media Horizon report for 2013. We also won from the Virtual Education Journal the Reader's Choice Best Award for Professional Development and Best Award for a Virtual Event. Okay, now the thing of it is we developed it along the way. We're connectivists, so that means C, so that means we're not going to follow what you'd necessarily see. Instead, we said to our faculty, because we found this out, we told our faculty, when you're learning this, we are totally okay if you lurk. We are totally fine. We understand that this is a new subject. We are not going to be looking at retention numbers. We're going to understand you're going to come online, that this is professional development, and you get what you need from this course. So it could be anything from identifying the network, meaning you found out who we were, and you went in and you looked at the resources. Lurking means, and how many of you guys are taking Coursera courses or took Coursera courses? Raise your hands. How many of you based on that, would consider yourself lurkers in those Coursera courses? Yeah. Okay, here's the deal. You can stop feeling bad about it, okay? Please stop feeling bad about it. And that's one of the big lessons we learned with our faculty, is we started to say, guess what? It is okay to lurk. One of our friends who's on the advisory board, she started saying, lurk and learn. And it worked, okay? I had faculty, going down the hallway that see me, and they go, hey, Kay, lurking in your class. And we had another faculty member who teaches online, who lives in Oregon. He would meet with a bunch of school teachers like every Sunday morning, and they never posted one thing in that course, but they talked about it. I found out at another community college, I had a bunch of lurkers who, again, met for lunch and talked about what's going on, but never decided to post there. So that was one of the things. So this is the social network knowledge construction thing. It's from Dr. Lisa Dolly out of Boise State. I didn't put all the information there, but we totally told our people there's 5 levels. You decide what you need. If this is going to be individualized, if this is going to be personal, that you get to decide what you need. And guess what? Do not feel bad about it if you can only do the first week, or you can only do the last week. Okay, since we are game-based learning, we gave awards. We gave awards every single week for cool stuff like cataclysmic, meaning, and the definition of the cataclysmic award was you melted the brain of the participants, meaning you had such a great post. We had a collaborator, and collaborator was meaning you were helping everybody in there. So you got that award, and I mean we had a bunch of other awards that were based on gamer vocabulary. We ended up giving them badges because they wanted to be graded. We went in with it being a C MOOC, a connectivist MOOC, but then we started to they're like, but we want a grade, we want a test, we want something. And I'm like, no way am I giving you a grade. And so instead we came up with badges. So we ended up with a Brave Beginner badge, a game-based learning badge, and then a network learning badge. Okay, the other thing, huge, lesson learned. Instructors love going and looking at other people's courses. They do, and they've never been able to do that before online. So what we did in our teaching and learning with technology, which was conference, which is on the campus, and also as part of it, we had them go and look at some other people's MOOCs, okay? And they loved it. They loved going in, seeing the format, learning about these other MOOCs. They didn't take them. They went in there and lurked, and they did some reporting back. And then with 3 specific other MOOCs that were going on that were basically in our content area, we specifically had them go in there and do discussions on them. And that was the Rhetoric and Game MOOC, a MOOC built in a virtual environment that was based on Anne Frank. It's beautiful. It's out of New York, and you do not get the idea of the space that Anne Frank had to hang, basically live in with her family, and so you can go into there with your avatar. And then the last one, digital storytelling MOOC, that DS-106, that's out there. It's still open. It's still running, and you guys can go in at any time. Our platform that we ended up deciding on was a gaming guild site. So it looked just like the arena that we wanted them in. We wanted them to do game-based learning. We wanted them to understand gamers. We used a gaming guild site. Okay, we did asynchronous and synchronous. And we went to multiple modalities, and one huge thing that they loved, now remember, this is gaming, this is lots of beautiful, rich 3D environments, okay? Flickr worked wonderful. They were constantly taking screenshots. In fact, when it came to the discussion forums, we asked them to put, besides putting text, put a screenshot with every single one that you did. Okay, we did lots and lots of synchronous online events, and we learned that our people really wanted this. We did a quick hangout overview every Monday morning, and then we'd have a guest speaker usually on Tuesdays. Wednesdays was a tweet chat. Friday was office hours for anyone who wanted to stop by, and then usually Saturdays we went into a game. They could either come in game with us or they could go ahead and watch. Big hit we found was tweet chat. Okay, tweet chats at 7 p.m. for 1 hour, and we would talk about games. And we'd put links to games in there. And people had it's only 140 characters, but when it goes fast and furious, they really got the feeling of discussing and being on there with other people. And had a lot of people making snarky comments, and that was cool. And they loved it. They loved getting on there and being witty and fun and informative and connecting with people from around the world. Because even though it was specifically for our college, we opened it up to the world. And well, I have to say the English-speaking world, because we really didn't get anybody who didn't. We had a couple people from Finland, but other than that, basically everybody was English as first language. Okay, that's just a picture of tweet chat. Then we went into these very, very rich virtual environments, beautiful virtual environments that were not text-based and weren't about watching a talking head on a video. We went into Hangouts. So these Hangouts, as you can see at the bottom, all those screens are people who are logged in there. That with Hangout, you can also have the chat that shows up on the side. And even if they didn't want to play the game, even if they wanted to be more of a lurker type, they were able to see everything that was going on. And then we had guest speakers galore. This is the Director of Educational Technology for the state of New Jersey, and he's a gamer. Okay, so he came on to talk. We built platforms. This is a storyboarding out your game, and we did it in a 3D environment. So rather than just showing PowerPoints, you could actually walk around the storyboard and see what the flow would be. We did multiple modalities. Some people like hanging out. Some people like other virtual environments because the back channel was stronger in the other virtual environments. So this was being broadcast over Google Hangout and then also broadcast into Second Life, where we had a facility full of people doing an extra back channel. Like I said, we took them on some very intensive, this is known as a raid. We took them on raids and showed them the learning that was happening in raids. You see that picture there? There is a lot going on there, okay? And it's all happening online. Think about your students who complain about not being able to post 3 sentences, okay? Okay, so our findings real quick. Synchronous and asynchronous. There are different people who like different things. Some people love text, some people love forums, some people it's like the salons of old, only it's online. And then for asynchronous, and there are some people who will not put one sentence in that forum, but showed up for every single synchronous event and were huge discussants, whether they got on mic or whether it was text. Some of the other ones, lurking is learning, and we just got to accept that. You can lurk and learn. You don't have to fill out you don't have to have an assessment. You could still be learning things. This really, at least in our system, legitimized innovation. We brought in anybody we could who was doing something game-based in our system, and we did a hangout with them so they could talk about it. We continually got back thanks from them for saying, nobody else is noticing what I'm doing. You guys are the first people to take a look at it. So it did that. And then it really helped identify who leaders were at different colleges and for different projects. Something else, we talked a lot about cognitive disequilibrium. We're meaning it's okay to be confused. Not everything has to be easy and simple, and it's not like that with technology, and it's not like that with learning. Too often we pay attention to everything has to be universal design, and everything has to look all the same. Well, guess what? Your students aren't going to have everything they do in the same LMS when they get a job. You know what I mean? It's not going to be all white and blue. It's not going to be, the button's always not going to be at the same place. And our students have to get used to navigating through different areas and getting this cognitive disequilibrium. And we were able to really look at different forms of assessment. Our big forms of assessment were students doing their own screencast recordings of what they were doing online, in virtual environments, in games, explaining things and doing tutorials. Okay, the other thing is we got to have lots of great discussions about this, and I'm probably towards the end. We did hit on some snags. Some of our people complained that there were too many videos. So there were some people who took the MOOC thinking it would only be text. Okay, the other thing with Google Hangouts, we do 60 minutes, and we were asked to chunk out the videos. I did not have a production staff to do that, but what instead happened was YouTube, without telling anybody, now makes it possible for you to, where it says show more, do a table of contents. You just figure out what you want the chunks to be, you label them, you can make a beautiful table of contents, and it takes about as much time as rewatching that video, as opposed to sending it to some production staff. The color was off-putting. We heard that our Black Guild site that looked like a gaming site was off-putting. We heard that. And then, well, we took lots of pictures of other guild sites and said, it looks just like everything else. This is your community of practice. And then the missions and quests we developed were for the badges, and that was really because, like I said, some people just wanted a grade. Okay, some things that we did not expect. We had people in there who didn't like games, who in their introduction, I will never forget her, the goddess of blood and sand. Raise your hand if you're here. But anyway, she wrote, I don't like games. I don't think they have any value. You need to prove it to me that games are valuable. And I'm like, what are you doing in my course? What are you doing here, right? And I have to say my work studies, like were chanting to me because I wanted to answer. They're like, don't feed the troll. Don't feed the troll. Okay. Okay. Sometimes, it's still there with the games, and even taking MOOCs, you get negative feedback from colleagues. The roll of the eyes. All I have to say is, toughen up there. If a colleague rolling their eyes or making a comment is going to stop you from some great innovation, or so from you learning or your students learning, roll your eyes back at them. Just practice it. Go to a mirror and practice, okay? Okay. And here's the big one that also surprised me. Our speakers, at the point that they were at, usually had some small grant funding. And we got a lot in discussions about, well, they were grant funded. I had to go in and actually go in discussions and say, they're grant funded now. They were doing this for the last 5 years, on their free time, on their weekends, building whatever game-based virtual environment there was before anybody paid any attention to them. And I really had to talk about how people were bootstrappers. I'm hopefully ending really soon. Okay. So basically, these are just some of the environments. This is Minecraft. This is our last iteration here. We're really seriously looking at Minecraft. Again, online communities and what happens there. And this is kind of an invitation because our session is ending soon, and we're ending it with an online symposium, and you are more than welcome to come. And that's what our MOOC was about. It was a CMOOC. Thanks.
I can't see very well. So. Right at the top. Okay, I'm Pat James, and this is Micah Orloff, and we're from Mount Santa Center Community College, and we are the opposite of what Kay just talked about, and we learn the same lessons. Go figure. Go figure. That's pretty interesting, I think. Hold on, let me get my timer started here. There we go. We did something completely different. Our story is that we went to a meeting with the governor of California's finance people a while back, and they wanted to know, I mentioned earlier, they wanted to know if we could use these for credit, and because we had a problem with access for our students because of our economy. And we had this conversation, and we all decided no, we couldn't for a variety of reasons. But I went back, and the reasons were all the reasons you might think about, which are, how do we get the credit taken care of? It doesn't go through curriculum process. We don't know who the students are. There were just too many questions. There's so many students. No one can learn in a community that big. Blah blah blah. Anyway, what ended up happening was I went back to the college and sat down with some friends. This one, Micah is the director of At One, which is a professional development project, but he and I have been conspirators for about 15 years in distance ed. And so we sat down with some of our English instructors and we said, what if we created a MOOC? And they went, no. And what was happening then was we were cutting all of our basic skills classes in favor of transfer degree courses because of the economics. We were told to participate in something called workload reduction. Have you heard that term before, workload reduction? That translates to cut sections. That's what it means. And so the department chairs cut basic skills sections in favor of transfer courses because, after all, they look better, we all look better when we transfer students or they graduate, right? So in the light of that, my thinking was, what do we do for those people who come to us for open access education, and what do we do with them? They don't place into college level English, and there aren't enough basic skills classes to get them into college level English. And they don't place, for a lot of reasons, they don't take the placement test seriously as a big one. And I don't know if you have that issue at your colleges too. They just don't. And so they go into the placement test thinking, no problem, I'm going to do this. And then they place into 2 levels below college level English. And like my son came out of AP English in high school. He had an A in AP English. Okay, didn't pass the AP test, however, but that's another story. Anyway, so we wanted to provide something for those students. We also thought if we did a good enough job, it might be something that the rest of the system could use as a resource. Basic skills classes don't provide any reason for credit. It's really sad that students use their financial aid on them. It takes a lot of time. It translates into, if you place into one of those, it translates into probably a year more at the college and about $1,500, $2,000 of your money. So we wanted to really change that situation. And that's how we got the buy-in of our instructors. And they've been wanting to do something like this for a while, didn't have a framework for it, and this seemed to provide that. So at about the same time, our chancellor's office was in conversation with Daphne Kohler of Coursera, and so they put me in touch with her. And I had several long conversations on the phone sitting on my back porch talking about what her goals were for Coursera at the time and what we wanted to do, and she really liked the idea of what we wanted to do. We were going to put a course in her platform that was the lowest level course that they would offer. They have all these other courses that are not for community college students, beginning community college students. They're for us. They're for students who are, who can read well and are good students and want more information, and all of their courses were these high-level courses. So this was unique. Through this whole process, we also got in touch through Daphne with grant opportunities through the Gates Foundation. And are there others of you out here who got the grant for the MOOCs through the Gates Foundation? And we got $50,000. And at that time, I thought, wow, I can do a lot with $50,000. No, not so much. Because these are really heavily video based. And so there's a lot of production involved. And we're a community college, so we don't have big production facilities. We don't have researchers. We don't have graduate students. We don't have money. We don't have resources. So the $50,000 went really fast. We put in probably another $15,000 to $20,000 in kind, where some of us worked within our jobs. And I told a student in the discussion board when I finally got fed up and decided to feed the troll and it went well too. I said I didn't get paid extra for doing this. I did it at night. I did it in the morning. I did it on holidays. I did it on Sundays. I think I was even working on this class in my sleep. Matter of fact, I know it was. And I did it because I want this to be a better world, because I'm involved in open access education at the community college level. Community college saved my life. I want to really be there for other people, and I don't want to live in a world with stupid people. I don't think I said that in that post exactly like that, but I don't. I want people to be able to communicate, to be able to read and communicate, so that if someone says global warming is not a human developed issue, that I want them to be able to go look it up. because I really think that the future of our planet depends on global education and global communities. I really feel that. So that was my buy-in. And I said at the end of it, I think someone will probably post negatively about this post too. And they didn't. So the first lesson we learned was what you said about being thick-skinned. And that came from Denise Comer at Duke, who launched 2 weeks before us. You can imagine in a regular online, a traditional, isn't that interesting, traditional online course that if you have 35, maybe 30 students in an online course, you have 3 crazy people who hate everything you do, everything that you do. And they will vocally say how they hate it, why you do it, or what you're doing, on and on. So imagine 50,000 students in your class. How many people would be saying those kinds of things? And so we had to learn to be thick-skinned and not feed the troll, for one. And also, and some students said, they wrote in the discussion forums, don't feed the troll. And we also had to learn we had to tell our faculty, and I had to keep on them about, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We didn't address those issues mostly because it depended on the complaints, but there were some, and we didn't address most of them. The students did, which was really great. Cynthia, sitting down here, was one of our students. She's a faculty member in the community college. She was one of our students. If someone, she completed. If some of our students wrote things that were negative about the course, 20 other students came in and voted them down. And you can vote them down in Coursera, and then their post goes to the bottom and nobody sees it. So we really didn't have to do much. But for our own sanity, we had to learn that. We're going to show the course real quickly and talk about other things that we learned. We learned you have to have more than $50,000, or you have to have really dedicated, committed people who are willing to work for free. We took everything we knew about distance education and we put it into this course, and we built it like we would have built a traditional course. We went looking for Coursera models that were good, that we liked, and we couldn't find too many. Let's go to week 1. So we did a unit-based design where everything is in the unit, and we started with one on how to be a successful online learner because we thought our students would be basic students. The course is about parts of speech and language usage. Let's make that exciting. Okay, I was wondering how that was going to happen. But what we did was we started with this and made students do it. And we got some complainers about, I don't need to do this. And other people said, wait a minute, this is great. This is my first online class. 51% of our students had never taken an online class before. 70% of them were international ESL students. We were surprised about that. That created this amazing community. We've offered the course twice. We just finished the second iteration, and we marketed better. We had 207 of our own students from our college. 950 California residents took it. And again, the numbers were about the same. It was over 50,000 students. We had about 30,000 active most of the time. We had 3,500 complete the last assignment, which you had to do in order to get a certificate. And in each class, it was 2,700, give or take, okay, who completed. And we thought, 2,700 out of that many. But when you think about it, how long would it take you to teach 2,700 students and get them through something successfully? It would take a long time. So you have to look at, and Kay mentioned this, you have to look at the lurkers. You have to know why they're here. And we have data. And that data is being analyzed right now. I think I gave a handout to Hay to put on the website. It's a draft, I want you to know. But it does give you a lot of numbers. And we have our research and planning group doing data right now on why they took this class. Most of them took it for professional reasons. They wanted to improve in their job, just generally in their writing. So we'll show you the class. Where do you want to go? Let's go to week 2.
Can you run through those numbers again while you're all pulling that up?
Which ones?
Number of people that registered and the completers.
We had about 50,000 enrolled. There was 2 sessions, so it was probably a little more than that, both of them. About 30,000 active most of the time. Now these are just general numbers. I have the exact numbers I can give you after.
And the PowerPoint the PowerPoint is shared with WCET, so it should be made available to you guys with a lot of those.
All those numbers are there, and 2,700 passed. Okay, got a certificate.
First.
Yeah. And, it really means that I think generally in online education, we need to look at how we get people through things in a different way than success and retention numbers. I have a researcher on my campus who I love dearly who puts on our online success and retention rates on the top of every report he gives. And I told him, don't do that. Can you not do that? Because it's like comparing apples and oranges. And we really need to let people know that it's about access and providing students with seats, providing students the access to the information. That's what it's about. So if you didn't have the online classes on our campus, you would be losing probably 6,000 student enrollments. I'm not talking about success and retention. I'm talking 6,000 student enrollments, 6,000 student enrollments that couldn't get into those classes otherwise. What are we looking at here? Okay, so you want to go through this?
I just want to add really quickly that one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved with this grant project that we had here was being a part of the At One project, which is responsible for providing quality professional online teaching development, is we wanted to see if we can incorporate some of the things we're trying to share with our faculty for traditional online learning and see if we can still adapt them here and see if there is a positive outcome. But most importantly, I think Mike pointed out something really important, and that is that it's about a conversation. It's about exploration. It's about inquiry. We're looking into things here. And before we actually go up here, I want to show you. You see here where it says American English underneath? That was part of the process of going through development.
Yes.
We were just doing our thing as we normally would and preparing the lectures and completing the work. And then when we realized that our target audience was a little more than what we anticipated, which was originally going to be developmental English students in our own California state, but maybe nationwide, we realized that a lot of our initial students were global and likely had experiences with different versions of English. So and here's a map of all the students who popped on and decided to share where they're from. But the important thing is it allowed us to continue to think about, to inquire, to explore what we were doing and whether or not we were, addressing the issues of the audience that we were working with. And that's the real, I think, value in going through a process like this. And there have been times in the past where we might not have been able to do that because the conversation gets shut down.
Tell us about when we saw this coming home. Talk about what that was like when we watched that.
Oh, yeah. And so there was a question yesterday. We kind of shared this yesterday in a separate meeting. They said, somebody asked in a chat window, wow, how did you feel when you noticed that, 45,000 were registered in the class?
And the answer to that question is.
And it was kind of like that, I don't know if you've seen that I think it's a UPS commercial where it's a small business and then they see online their first 5 sales and they're like, yes! And they're all excited and then it starts to increase and they slowly sit down in their chair thinking like, wow, is this something we're ready to take on? And so, but it's exciting at the same time. So you want to see that?
Yeah, let's go. So we're going to go week 2.
We're in the, oh no, we're in the.
I think we are. No, we're not. Anyway, so we designed this based on what we knew. And that was a good thing, actually, for this kind of class. And our audience, we thought, would be people who were in college, wanted to do better in their classes, or wanted to place. And that's not who our audience was. So we had to really shift all the way along, including the language. What we did was we wanted to lead people through things. And so we were very clear about numbering everything and telling students to go through things in order. And we got compliments from people about how organized it was and how easy. And those people who were new said, I now feel like I can actually do an online course. I haven't tried it before. This was good. I feel like I can do it. So we were able to give students confidence in their ability to take online classes. And I think that was because of the way we organized it. We had to be reviewed by Quality Matters, and it was through their community ed, continuing ed review rubric, and we got 95 out of 100 on that review. And I remember watching that. That was also one of those exciting freak out moments where we were looking at the report and just going from one to the other going, wow, 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 we got all these. So we hit our mark with our design, and I think that was really important. As you can see, we had the components that you would normally have really in an online class. The issue was, how do we grade and how do we deal with writing? How do you review writing? And you absolutely can't with that many people. And so you have to tell students you can't with that many people, but we're going to do peer review. And there were pros and cons from the students for that. We had very detailed rubrics, which we needed, and we made them more detailed as we went forward. We kind of adjusted how that worked. And one adjustment we need to make is to take the due dates off of the quizzes. We have to keep them for the peer review because of the way they group people, but we can take them off the quizzes, because if you miss a quiz, then you can't make it up and you can't get a certificate. So if we take the due dates off the quiz, and that came from our students, came from Cynthia and others, we probably will have more completers. So, and they can do it on their own a little bit better. This is a resource. We put it out there. It's Creative Commons licensed. If you enroll, you can go in, you can download all the videos. You can download, we had a text that our faculty wrote on the foundations of writing, and it's really pretty good. You can use it in your classes. You can use it as a resource, whatever you want to do. We're going to show you one little piece of a lecture, and it's already down here. Yeah.
And I'll add a little quick something about this too. We're going to show you a little piece of a lecture as it says here, but what's important is we still took practices that we learned about in what kind of video should we be sharing, how long should that video be to maintain attention, and we were using those type of ideas and characteristics that come out of the research to ensure that what we were providing wasn't just some long talking head hour and a half long video, because we know what will happen if that's the case. So we try to still take the effective practices and just incorporate it here. So we'll show you this now.
It's just ready. Go ahead.
I'll slow down the video. Where's the?
It's right there. It's right here.
Not slow down, it says. It's right there.
So in spite of is our preposition here.
And you did find the hammer.
Yes, we did. It's right here. Right where we expected.
Behind the toolbox, we found it. All right, conjunctions, as their name implies, are words that join words, phrases, and clauses. For the time being, all you need to do is familiarize yourself with 4 different categories of conjunctions, because we'll be developing these in later units. The 4 different types are coordinating conjunctions, correlative conjunctions, adverbial conjunctions, and my personal favorite, subordinate conjunctions. You'll learn much more about these in the subsequent units, about each of these. And coordinating conjunctions are easily remembered with the acronym FANBOYS, FANBOYS, that stand for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And you can use coordinating conjunctions to join words, phrases, and clauses that are extremely versatile.
Yeah, so again.
Now, obviously, there's a little bit of corniness in that, but the corniness is part of the, the funny that's in that. But yeah,
they had quite a chemistry, these 2 guys. And Larry, the bald guy over there, we were teasing about. He's the one without the hair. But anyway, he didn't want to do the videos. And we thought that was kind of funny that he wanted to be in the course, but he didn't want to do the videos. And we made him. And we said, no, you got to do them. Because no, I'm not good at it. But he was so great. He had this kind of mostly deadpan kind of way of doing things, except when he giggled, like you just saw. And our videographers were really sensitive to leaving those things in so that the students got that sense of who these people were. Our lesson learned here was you have to be human. You absolutely, the high touch, as much as you can do it in a class like this, you need to do it. And we put it in. There were 4 instructors, 3 technician, developer, designers, 7 peer writing tutors that we paid out of the grant in the course, in the discussions, the entire time. And we had schedules about watching those discussion boards, and we were in there. And in the second one, we had community TAs, which are people who come back, who are in your first class and just want to help. Usually they're teachers, sometimes retired teachers. And we had, I think, 25 of those this last time. And so we have a lot of people in there. We're doing a lot of high touch with our students. And I think that makes a big difference. And they're all surprised at how they're saying that they don't usually get to see that. So that was also a lesson learned. Yeah.
I so enjoyed the videos. I was so disappointed when they ended. And because the rapport between the 2 was so good.
You know, one student in our first one wrote, "Do you see that they're both wearing wedding rings? Isn't that sweet?" I'm not sure what that reference was about, but it was indicative of their identifying with these people as human beings. And I think for this type of work, that's what really needed to happen. Someone asked me, isn't this just passing on information or is it education? And I have to say resoundingly, it's education. We were involved in education. We were not involved in just transferring information. We answered questions. We did a lot of work with trying to make sure that people understood the concepts that were here, and we listened to what they had to say. And I think that's educating people. It's not just providing information. So with that, is there anything that you want to add?
Well, the last thing I'll say is that I want to, what she didn't share with you is that the gentleman on the right, Larry, he was ready to retire. He already had he hadn't put in his retirement papers, but he already had planned his retirement. And as a result of this experience, he has decided to put off those plans. And what I really feel is important to point out was, as she was talking about him not wanting to do the videos, there was a moment where I remember connecting with him. I was kind of sitting back in the director chair and saying, look, you do a great job doing this. And it's a quality performance. And I just remember like feeling this sense of like almost coaching and kind of like, you're doing it, you're doing it, you're doing it. And it's empowered him from being what he thought would be just the back end guy to somebody who feels a little bit more like I can do more, I can do more, I can do more. And I think all of us at one point started as a lurker. And there are going to be some that are going to remain a lurker, and that's fine. It's totally okay. But there are some that are lurking and that maybe haven't had that spark to go from lurk to possibly create or contribute. And that's where I feel we play a major role in helping that spark, finding the appropriate design, finding, what works, helping with the social learning interactions. And so what's great about this conversation, as Mike pointed out again, is it's here. I thank New York Times for continuously talking about it. Something that it's snarky, that's all right, because we've been talking about this forever. But it's great that it finally, even if it's under the wrong, purposes, it's a great thing that now it's on the platform and it's an opportunity for the real disruptors to come in and make sure what comes out of it is the appropriate thing. So I appreciate you guys being here, listening in, and I hope that you continue to try to take this opportunity that's been put before us and try to disrupt even more. Now, there's one last thing. The conversation's here. It's in front of us. But who's going to drive where it goes from this point forward? Is it going to be the investors? Is it going to be the educators? Is it going to be a mixture of both? That's the question I put out to you guys. I want you to think about that, because I feel that if we start thinking about that, you'll start seeing, I don't know if you guys heard about an article that came out from Fast Company yesterday. Sebastian Thrun of Udacity is basically changing his mission from sharing this free education with the world and the global audience to now it's probably going to be more of a corporate training model. That kind of mission change seems a little strong for me. I'm just saying, it's when you have a mission or if you have a purpose in your heart, and my feeling is he probably adjusted it because of the capital and the investors, and so we have to ask that question.
I forgot what I was going to say. Senior moment. One thing with Kay, same thing. Even if it's not for credit, students are crazy about points. Drove us crazy with points. They do drive us crazy with points. And the very last thing I want to say, similar to Micah, I didn't want to trash something I didn't know anything about. So before you say MOOCs are horrible and awful and they don't have a place, you need to experience them yourselves in some way if you haven't already. And you're welcome to go into ours. And before we're done, or if you want to just email me, pjames@msjc.edu, and we're on the slide. I will give you access to our course and you can use it with your students. We went over a little.
Thanks, Dad and Micah. Actually, we have a 15-minute break, and then you're all welcome to come back for more open online conversations. And everybody will be here again so that we do have, because it is a conversation, we will have a chance for question and answers, and for you to share your comments and your experiences and how we can actually improve this environment for our students. So back in by 10:45. Thank you.
We went over a
No,
few
that's
minutes,
okay.
but
That
not
was great.
bad. I don't
You know,
think. Let's watch our time.
and that was a really nice, just, the K is one milk and yours, and yet they're both fulfilling,
Yes.
needs on our community.
Yeah.
You know, that was great.
Thank you. We had fun doing this, and our students are now coming. They're coming into the assessment center and retesting, and we'll have some data on it.
That was good. Because my feeling is, I looked at your things as we were putting this in together. We could just stop doing that.
Yes.
Or else find another way, and then our faculty could go with the grading and assessment.
We could teach it. We could just give it to you, and you could use it anywhere where you want. You can teach it yourself.
That's true.
We took one of our basic skills classes. The money we spent on that, and that's what we're paying the teachers. Same thing. This one.
I got PJs. Yeah.
Go to Coursera.
This was a meaningful experience. Same, particularly now that.
Okay, so how do students like actually
No, it's
That's how we sign
yeah. I'm so that is awesome.
But you can go, you can download the good lectures.
Yeah, I can show. What I'd like to do is be able to show the faculty in my system what you're doing. Because I don't think they understand how it can be done.
Well, you know, what is and then you know
that's what see our legislature ever in our university system. Our legislature is asking and this would make it really use it
we have students right now. Oh, it's coming to our and so in about 2 weeks, she said, so we only had the doctor's certificate and they reassess them.
This is exactly because I used to teach college composition. That's stuff they don't know.
That's stuff they don't know.
Right.
They
made it.
They don't remember, but you know, you can miss up on it. Because they need
That's just where
they need it.
that's the thing is you're trying to help someone. If that's what's hard.
They don't know how to make sense. All the parts and the
Let's see.
explaining the why. All the way through.
It looks like, do we have
Yeah, I
data
went and talked
connectivity?
to PowerPoint. Hey,
Not a problem.
I wanted to really just have a conversation, provide some thoughts.
We have more. So back to we have a second half. So what is it on the WCT site?
Mm-hmm, it is. You guys are good, right?
I think so.
We've been recorded?
Yes, you guys are moving.
Oh, okay.
The greatest experience for me anyway.
All right, so I'm going to drive a little bit.
No problem.
I was at first, and I was kind of sharing the technological side of
I heard you. I saw it. I mean, I didn't hear you. I'm like, okay.
I know.
So I'm going to have Jonah talk first, and then Deb's going to talk about the platforms, and then you come on with, okay, here's this thing. Are we ready? Are you think you're ready? Here's a checklist.
Right. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm just going to talk through that.
Uh-huh.
All right. Thank you, Hay.
Perfect.
All right, you go ahead and transition up here.
Yes.
That's it?
I just love having you talk.
If it had been.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All that stuff.
You know, that's what it is. That's why.
And the good news is, we came out with a plan. We came out with a plan with the finance. Think more money.
Hey, and I saw you come in.
But
After we get together this afternoon,
Yes.
if can you join us for dinner?
Sure.
Ellen and Jane Hart are
Oh,
speaker,
yeah.
and Jane Bozart
Oh,
to come in. Remember, she was
Yeah.
our speaker last year. She's come in especially to hear Jane Hart.
oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. So we're going to have dinner together. You should join us.
Sure.
Great. Good deal.
The only thing, so basically I just have to do one thing. So I'll double check. I'm not sure. I was tentative plans. The Markwoods have gone to the museum, and so they said if they're done early, then we were going to try to get together for dinner. But if they, I guess there's a special Louvre exhibition, a traveling Louvre exhibition.
Oh, really? Somebody said that there was something about Impressionists.
Yes.
But I didn't know it was the
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And so you have to get tickets to go and all this other stuff. So
And you don't want to rush it.
no.
Once you're there.
So I said, and they have tickets for 2:30. So I said, you know what? Don't feel like you have to have dinner with me. Feel free to stay as long as you want. So they said they'll just text me.
Okay. All right. Well, we can play it by ear, but you'll have dinner when you're
One way or the other. All right. Do you have any? Do you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I need to. Perfect. Is it already on here?
I think I'm next, right?
Yes, you are next.
Cool.
So it's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
And they have to basically provide any information.
And so basically this goes forward and this goes backwards.
Great.
And so what's going to happen is at 10:45, they're going to come back. I'll do like 1 minute of welcome back, and then kind of set the stage for the second one.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
When they put out an RFP for the CSU, from the start, the chancellor's office said anybody who's going to want to fight, anybody who writes to fight can't be part of the CSU. So it's like immediately everybody you have is a employee. So I got a phone call from so they both wanted me to help them write. I said I get I'm still teaching for CSU, so I helped them without being on it. Richard Gath got wrote the white paper. So I just wrote hire somebody. So I, at that point, I used big opportunity. We talked to Joe Morrell and shared our vision with how I want to be able to help out. So I was born to help out. The issue is we don't need to read that's what you said you've done. In this whole I'm already getting that. What question is this? Are you doing How are we going to make this work? And it's just space. There's going to be a space social power. The heart of it is those two guys working. They're going to be heroes. Yeah. But you had the coach, right? And really the trying to empower and to it won't work without ever even touching it themselves. To let me try it out as a student. Let me see how I can, innovate myself. Let me see how I can or start doing it, and all of a sudden. But I'm hoping see how this issue is on track.
So now you are at Western Washington. Western Oregon Community State.
Writing is going to be knowledge.
So at Western Oregon
Unlike
yeah.
where you take your English and write this crap, it's like really was a
oh, so you get different perspectives.
writing.
So how did you end up working on this?
Well, so I've been teaching this class for, it's really written. I've been teaching this class where it's called WCET in Educational Technology. Before you, no, actually 2 years, for about 2 years. And
I was kind of sitting off to the side and I'm like, it's amazing that we have this together to build this one class. Somehow,
just things like, for example,
you change it kind of
every term. But really,
are we off?
I got bored with it, so I thought, oh, we have students instead of let's have them write. And so they were cool. You did it. And Google Docs. We published it on Amazon.
Wow.
So
I thought, today I just want to know about their projection, what they do.
I think that's really funny.
Sometimes when things happen.
That is true.
Cheryl there, right? Well, it didn't work out exactly right.
Mine is really short, so I feel like we're ready.
It's like, and
Do you have an iPad?
this is an Android. I do have an iPad. I use most of the Android. You should get somebody to get you iPad. Okay.
Basically, it's like a video toaster all on an iPad. On chroma key, big overlay.
I went to the extended session yesterday. So
Telephone,
maybe
touch, yeah. They also
the downside of the extended sessions, yeah.
Base version.
That's the one with Sparkle.
No, Sparkle's great too.
Yeah, Sparkle's great.
Sparkle.
Live scribe. Yeah, we'll sit down. Live scribe.
Do what?
Yeah, we'll
This one.
yeah, so you have that. Oh man, so that one messed it up. So
Yes.
I just bought one for the. I had the Wi-Fi one and I stopped using it. Yeah, and the interface.
And now it's with me with my
Short
iPad.
Yeah, me too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Almost stepped off of
What happened?
not being good. I don't want to forget.
We should plot.
Say what? I have one up there. He says, just one to wait around.
So I'm not trying to be rude. I'm really trying to talk to you. Like, it's fine. So I'm practicing being a true local learner. Practicing what we teach.
All right. I guess we're just trying to wait.
Do you want this one?
No, no.
It's got no wire on it.
Oh, that would be an idea.
Is it on?
I like it.
I thought it was on. I heard them speaking into it earlier.
Hello? All right. I guess we're about ready to start. While we're waiting for everyone to show up, I will fill dead time with a joke.
Oh, two mooks walk into a bar.
How does it end?
I haven't finished that part yet.
Oh.
You take it from there.
All right, so this guy is sitting at dinner, at this nice restaurant, and he looks over and he sees this woman dining by herself. She's gorgeous looking, and so he's trying to think of a nerve to how to go over and talk to her. So anyway, so as he's sitting there, all of a sudden she starts coughing, and out of her eye pops out, and he just happens to grab his hand and catch her eye. She had a glass eyeball. He takes it back to her and says, "Ma'am, I think you lost your eye." So she said, "Oh, thank you. Would you like to join me?" And so they sit and have a nice dinner. And then at the end of dinner, she says, "Oh, well, you want to share a cab wherever you're going?" And he said, "Okay." So they go out and they both realize they live in uptown New York. So they share a cab to her, and her place is on the way to his. So when they get to her place, she says, "Oh, do you want to come out for a nightcap?" "Sure." So he goes up, they have a nightcap, they have a great evening, and she says, "Why don't you spend the night?" He goes, "Oh, okay." So he spends the night. The next morning he wakes up to bacon frying, eggs, and they have a lovely breakfast. At the end of the breakfast, as he's getting ready to leave, he says, "Wow, do you do this often?" And she says, "No, I've never done this before." And he says, "Then how did this happen?" She said, "Oh, you just happened to catch my eye." All right. That's what my kids tell me. Anyway, welcome back to the second half of our conversation on MOOCs. It was really interesting how, despite the fact that Kay, in her gamification kind of MOOC, and then in California, the American English kinds of MOOC, how they are so different, and yet they have so many similar characteristics, and the lessons learned are the same. So it really makes us realize that this conversation on MOOCs are really kind of almost wherever you want it to go, and the focus needs to be on how it impacts our students. So on that note, then, we have our next presenter talking about his student views on MOOCs, and he's not a student, so he'll kind of talk about how he got here.
Thank you.
Oh, and you can use this one.
Okay, so my name is Jonan Donaldson, and I'm from Western Oregon University. I teach in a program, in a master's program, master's of Science and Education Information Technology program. And I've been teaching a class for the last, well, I forget how many, I guess it was a year or two, something like that. A class called Big Thinkers in Educational Technology. And in this class, we usually read 4 books by big thinkers on a particular topic relevant to education and technology. And it's an online class, and we have deep discussions and we write articles and things like this. Well, I decided I'd try a little experiment, and with the help of Dr. Busey, also from Western Oregon University, thank you for being here, we decided to totally flip out. Instead of flipping the class, we flipped out. In other words, instead of have the students read those books, have students write the book. Here's the book. They wrote this book in 10 weeks. It's on Amazon now. How did it get there? Well, here's the process we went through to get there. I built in our learning management system, of course, course level and then topic selection. I decided to go with MOOCs because I wanted something hot topic. And then I built out the LMS structure for that class. Then when the class started, we started in with role selection, and then using Google Docs, we started they started writing this book. It's not chapter by chapter. It was all the students in there together, just messing up each other's work. It was just a beautiful mess, and then cleaning up and editing, going into the discussion forums and talking about what we're doing. And that's how we got through this. Once the class started, I had them researching first a little bit, the pros and cons, because I wanted a balanced view. So the pros of MOOCs and the cons. And then weeks 3 through 5, then we selected the roles. We started writing. Week 6, editing. Week 7, 8, writing again. And then weeks 9 and 10, editing and publishing. It was fast and furious, but it was amazing. And the students had a wonderful time. And there's the result of that book. Today, I wanted to be here to present to you some of their ideas, their findings. They weren't able to come, of course, and economic reasons and so on, and jobs and things like that. So I'm here on their behalf. The first advantage that they found to MOOCs is that the platform and having such a large number of students allows for very interesting collaboration of people around the world, and they can group up with groups consisting of different people who speak different languages from different cultures, different backgrounds. Excellent collaboration comes up this way. And so they thought that this is a great advantage of MOOCs, and we should leverage the hell out of it. We should focus almost all of our attention on the collaborative nature and not on information delivery and here, watch this video, and here, read this article. We should be more about the collaboration because it's a very unique opportunity that we usually don't have in our smaller, regular online classes. We don't have such a great diversity of students, and being able to have them collaborate that way. The next thing, it's kind of counterintuitive, but they thought that one of the advantages of MOOCs, not as they are currently practiced in most cases, but the potential is there for much greater individualization of learning. They think the larger the number of students, then the greater amount of individualization possible. Sounds kind of strange, but the idea being that they can work in groups that are like for example, group projects, writing groups, different kinds of groups. They can work with people who have very, very specialized interests just as they do. So we can group off in more interesting ways and work with other people while still keeping your individual interests and things like this. Concerns. Their biggest concern was the poor quality. So they looked into a lot of MOOCs. They also did a lot of reading about MOOCs. They read everything there is to read about MOOCs, and then they participated in a bunch of MOOCs. And almost unanimously, they said there's too much content delivery. Read this, watch this video, take a test. Watch this video, take a test. And that, they feel, is poor quality education. In their view and mine, quality education is more constructivist. You have to build your understanding, construct your understanding as you're constructing, for example, projects, project-based learning, collaborative learning, different variations of these kind of things. That's where the real learning happens. If you're just watching some video and taking a test, it might be interesting, but pretty likely you're going to forget it, and I agree that this isn't the best education. So they were concerned about the poor quality, because as we can see from a lot of online classes recently in the last few years and a few MOOCs, then there is a lot of potential for great interactivity and collaboration and building your own understanding rather than just transfer of knowledge from the great sages to the students. Another concern they were quite concerned about was self-placement. As it is now, anybody, of course, can join a MOOC, and a lot of people, they'll think, oh, there's an interesting MOOC. I want to learn about, for example, the first popular MOOC was artificial intelligence. And a lot of the students in this class, they had participated in that first big MOOC, Sebastian Thrun's artificial intelligence MOOC. And within a few weeks, they're like, this is way over my head, the math is. And so they were worried about the self-placement. And they think there needs to be better mechanisms of figuring out what MOOCs are appropriate for my current levels. They also had some concern about plagiarism, and I thought this was interesting because usually it's teachers who's concerned about plagiarism. But they thought it was kind of not fair if there's going to be like papers and things like that or tests. Then there's a possibility, if it's so wide open, that students are just going to share answers or get answers or do, the traditional plagiarism, go copy stuff out of Wikipedia. And so they thought that's not fair to them because they were working hard and they thought others were perhaps doing more plagiarism. So they were concerned about that. They were concerned about the future, actually, of MOOCs. They were concerned that now they're free, massively open online courses, but they're concerned that it's going to be costing money in the future. For example, some institutions are saying you can have credit for these MOOCs if you pay us some money. And so this takes away the free part of it. And they wanted to go kind of the opposite direction. They wanted college and university courses to become free, and instead of MOOCs becoming for a fee. Finally, they were concerned about, would this destroy the profession of teaching? Because as you probably know, most MOOCs are built collaboratively and quite a large team. There's not one professor in charge of, I'm going to build this MOOC and teach this MOOC, and it's me and my students. And so the traditional model of the teaching profession, they thought, well, that might soon be a thing of the past, and what's going to replace it? And will it be as good, that replacement? For example, if you want to work on a MOOC and you are the content specialist, maybe you'll have less involvement with the students. And then somebody else is facilitating and working in the discussion areas and things like that. And so each of those roles they felt like might be diminished rather than one person having all those roles and being more in charge. They were a little concerned about that. I see where they're coming from. I'm not really as worried about that because I think collaboration is an awesome thing, including collaboration on building courses. That's really cool. And I think it's better than one person alone building and delivering a course. My personal opinion, even though I build and deliver courses myself. Disruptive innovation was one of the topics that they were concerned about, but positive and negative. So it went both on the pro and the con side. So first, they were thinking about disruptive innovation in terms of, well, going back to Clayton Christensen's definition of disruptive innovation. And we had, in a previous course, some of us had, those students had studied disruptive innovation, Clayton Christensen's books on the subject. And we were a little bit concerned at first that we hear a lot of people calling MOOCs a disruptive innovation. And the question was, is it a disruptive innovation? And then the question is, what is a disruptive innovation? Because this term is used quite freely in some cases. Let's take the example of, for example, the steam powering of ships. So there used to be large companies, fleets of trading companies sailing around the world before the introduction of steam. And then steam power came along and very small little startups started making steam powered ships. And big sailing companies said, oh, those things can't go very far, don't worry about them. Within 10 years, all those companies were gone. All those big companies, sailing companies. This was a true disruptive innovation. Similar thing about PCs. When personal computers really took off, before that, large companies had been doing all of the computer work and, giant, very expensive machines. And those companies were really not worried at all about the PC market. They thought, oh, toys, cute, very nice. That's not us, nothing to do with us. And within 10 years, all those companies were gone. So that's a truly disruptive innovation. So there's other kinds of innovations. There's all kinds of revolutionary innovations, but not exactly disruptive in the way that Clayton Christensen defines it. So here's their train of logic. If MOOCs can be free, and other things are, a lot of free things out there, Facebook, Gmail, YouTube, you can probably come up with a list of 100 wonderful, wonderful free things right now. If all these things can be free, including MOOCs, and then the technology and models exist to provide free education. That was their conclusion. If all these things can be free, then the business models and the technology is actually existent right now that we could offer complete degrees for free for anyone in the world. That was one of their conclusions. So why not? And therefore, perhaps the cost of higher education is artificially high. Of course, these are students who pay a lot for their education and constantly worried about their student loans. And this was a big theme in a lot of our discussions, is the cost of higher ed, and MOOCs are free. So why not the rest of higher ed? So that was their chain of thought. So therefore, thus MOOCs could be a disruptive innovation, but now higher education institutions appear to be rushing to turn this into a sustaining innovation. Clayton Christensen defines these two innovations, disruptive innovations and sustaining innovations. Sustaining innovations are like, for example, in the computer industry, Moore's Law, which says that the capacity, memory, and speed of computers will double every 18 months. And so far, it's been right on. And all of that is possible through sustaining innovations that are constantly happening in these companies. It doesn't disrupt anything. It just makes everything better and faster, but it doesn't disrupt anything. So they weren't sure if the disruptive innovation was a good idea or a bad idea, because if it's truly disruptive, then a lot of universities, colleges are going to go out of business. And what will replace them? Will it be as good? And will the model of education be a quality model, and all of those other kinds of concerns? It could be a disruptive innovation. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be turned into a sustaining innovation and no disruption at all. Would that be a good thing? So these questions we talked about. So here's the takeaways. They want lower cost or free higher education. They want collaborative learning. They want student-centered. They want individualization. They want very high quality, and they want everything to be fair. That's what the students want from MOOCs. It sounds like exactly what they want from higher ed. And I think MOOCs just got them thinking, oh, maybe there are some potentials here that MOOCs are leading the way, and we need to go from there. Thank you.
Well, I guess I question, why shouldn't it be free? And if MOOCs is a way for us to have this conversation, then I am glad that we are here having this. Okay, while Deb is coming up, let me figure out how we're getting to the other. Here you go, Deborah.
Okay, thanks. Oh, don't forget your book. So today I'm going to talk about the experience that we at Blackboard have had with working with 50 plus institutions on their MOOCs. We've seen a great variety of perspectives and purposes that I think are useful for you to think about, for all of us to think about. So we've already talked a lot about how variable MOOCs are and how it's generating a conversation about how we think about the different components that these letters stand for. And so this is a useful graphic when you think about, well, slot this in, take that out. It becomes a space for experimentation. I'm not going to talk through everything on this slide, but there are a couple of things that I think are interesting to call out. One, if you look at self-paced and start and end dates, those are going to be in many ways tied to the role of the instructor. And, in some ways, so most MOOCs are following the start and end dates model, like a traditional course. Well, we know that doesn't necessarily work very well for learners, especially learners who are doing this as an overload on top of a lot of other things. They might need to dip in and out of it and have their own timeline. But in some ways, that start and end date has become sort of like the credit hour in terms of how do you define when the faculty need to be available? And if we're compensating them, what is the time span for which they're being compensated? And so that's an important factor to keep in mind when you're considering the structure of the MOOC. that time and date can also be influenced a lot by the online, because believe it or not, a lot of MOOCs, well, it's not really that surprising. I mean, we're human beings. We like to socialize with other human beings face to face. And so a lot of MOOCs also have local cohorts, either people who are getting together in a real place, and in some cases actually bridging a face-to-face class with a MOOC class. We'll talk about an example of that. And let me say something about badges and assessments and feedback, which is if students are just coming and they see it as a body of course materials and they just dip in and out and they get something from it, that's fine. But if they're actually committed to doing something in that environment, they want to get something back. They want to get real feedback. They want to get points. They want to get badges. And badges can be a nice way of not having to deal with the complexities of offering credit for a MOOC, because you can give the students portable evidence of learning that in some cases they will actually be able to use for other purposes, depending on how you design those badges, without, again, like I said, a lot of the complexity of dealing with credits. So we have a MOOC platform. It's the same technology as a local Blackboard installation, and we found that a lot of people find this attractive for a lot of reasons. One, it's a familiar environment, and even if you're not a Blackboard user, if you use another LMS, you'll find it very easy to author in this environment. It can be used for bridging. We have some institutions that are using it where they have a course that actually is a registrar's course on their campus in their local Blackboard system that is bridged through a set of activities and social engagements and even shared content with a course that's on the MOOC platform. And the materials in the MOOCs can easily be reused. So if your purpose is experimentation and you want to take that material out and use it in courses that are in your local Blackboard installation, or actually if you want to export those MOOC materials as common cartridge and import them into any LMS, makes it very reusable. And when you do those exports of materials from this platform, there's an easy option for choosing to make those resources OERs and sharing them globally. So the primary thing that I'm going to talk about today is what we see as three key patterns in terms of why people are doing MOOCs. When they come to talk to us, we get into really great dialogue. And that dialogue is not just between Blackboard employees and Blackboard clients, but it's really part of a community in terms of thinking about where teaching and learning is going, including the people who are participating in teaching and learning activities within the company. And we have a couple of examples that I'll talk about in terms of MOOCs that we're offering that really helps us think more deeply about how these technologies are being used and for what purposes. So these three primary categories, I mean, for some people, like we saw, so I think that the composition course is a really good example because it's both an open access course and it's experimentation course, I would say, because it's open access in that we need to get these materials out there. We need to help more people learn this, really vital body of materials, but it's also experiment to see if it can help solve a very real problem at the institution in terms of availability of sections. And some of those experimentations are a little more provocative in terms of saying, well, what if we have, like I said, enrolled students who are working with students who are not at the institution, and maybe we have maybe our student body in terms of who's enrolling in our classes is really sort of monolithic in terms of their demographic backgrounds. And we want to teach a course where they're going to be exposed to a lot of other perspectives. And so pairing that with a MOOC can be another important experimentation area. And sometimes, I think this is particularly like with the edX courses, the branding is an issue for a lot of people, and that's perfectly legitimate. If you have some good product that you want to be able to get out there and get more visibility for your institution, MOOCs can help you do that. So I'll talk through a few examples. At UMass, they have a Coasts and Communities course, a MOOC, which is an environmental outreach course. And at Fort Hays, Kansas, they have a course on social entrepreneurship. SUNY has done a course on OERs. It's about finding, reusing, creating, and contributing to the community around open educational resources. At Blackboard, we have gotten an enormous amount of interest and participation in our MOOC on universal design and accessibility for online learning. Really important topic, this sort of thing where, we would all agree, let's get open learning out there and help as many people as possible understand how to design for accessibility. In the category of experimentation, Cuyahoga Community College got a grant to to see whether or not they could use MOOC structures to improve their developmental math. And so they created a MOOC it's self-paced, but it's highly structured. It uses completely OER material. So because there's no registration fees for the MOOC and because there are no course materials to purchase, MOOC is 100% free for students who are taking that course. It's competency-based, so the students have to move up through 4 levels. They can't go to the next level until they have at least 80% mastery on the first level. And there are badges for each of those competency levels. And they found that to be a really important factor because it was very motivational for the students, but also because if the students didn't complete, they had badges that they could take with them that may or may not have currency in another environment. I'll talk about badge currency in a second. But at least they have something they can show for it. They feel like they've accomplished it. It's going to help them in their general sense of ability in developmental math, as well as having the actual mastery of that particular topic area. In fact, their completion rates in this developmental math course were considerably higher than most MOOCs. It was a completely voluntary course, and they got about an 18% completion rate. University of Pittsburgh has a Department of Communication graduate seminar, and they have 9 doctoral students who are, on the ground, face-to-face in a communications seminar, and they're doing it hybrid in tandem. I think actually now it might be past tense, I'm not sure. They're doing it in tandem with a MOOC of 175 students, and the seminar actually generates a lot of the MOOC content because the graduate student, part of their assignments are they're getting credit for creating and teaching some of those lessons in the MOOC to those 175 students. Now, some of you might say, well, 175 students, that's not massive. Well, remember, all of those letters are optional. It's really about a dialogue in terms of what we're doing in these environments. And showcase examples, Syracuse has a course on the history of sports and the evolution of sports industries, which, as you can imagine, is a really popular topic, especially since sports management is a really popular and growing field for study. And so that's gotten them a good amount of visibility. They also have a librarianship course that lets them highlight their iSchool. Who knew Syracuse had an iSchool, right? So that's a good thing for them to create publicity around that. And the University of Illinois Springfield, they set up a MOOC on the anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. So, Springfield, history of Abraham Lincoln, they have world-class scholars on that topic. It gave them a great chance to showcase that in collaboration with museum curators and others who participated in that MOOC. And so I'll spend just a couple more minutes talking about the MOOC that is top of mind for me, because this is our MOOC. Blackboard and your MOOC, because this is Blackboard, WCET, Mozilla, and Sage Road. We all collaborated on designing and building this MOOC. And we did so. It actually came from a discussion at WCET last year where we were saying, well, how do we bridge what is a gap between the way our institutions are educating students and what employers need when those students graduate, and can badges help in that ecosystem? And so this MOOC it provides scaffolding around this topic of what kind of ecosystem does it take for badges to actually have currency and value, and to balance out those players, the learning providers or the assessors, the learners themselves with their badges, the employers, and the validation structure and accreditation structure, and the competency definitions that can help tie all that together. We actually have a whole session on this MOOC and the currency of badges in the after lunch time slot. But this MOOC is really tied to being a community. So we did have 8 weeks of live sessions with a really rockin' lineup of guest speakers. We had badge design labs. Those activities were synchronous, but they were all recorded. So now those things become part of the MOOC resources that anyone can go in and work through this at their own pace. The course has a series of challenge assignments that walks people through a scaffolding in terms of how to understand badge ecosystems and work through the stages of being able to plan and build their own badge systems. Not from a technology perspective, although there is technology help in the course, but really from the sense of who are the players? What do they have at stake? How can this be a thriving ecosystem, this badge system that you're creating? And so we had incredible participation in this MOOC. We still have people joining it. We expect that to continue. There's about 1,800 people in there now, and we awarded hundreds of badges for what are very challenge assignments. So people put a serious amount of work into this course, and we're very gratified in the way this has created a community around this topic. Couple of points with regard to MOOCs to make about this. One, we had a budget of zero, absolutely zero. Now, we had, 4 big collaborators. We had a team of about 14 people who worked on this over about 6 months. It was a ton of work. But it just goes to prove that you can produce these kinds of communities or courses without a big budget. The other thing to note is that all of the resources in this MOOC are available under a Creative Commons license. We encourage people to reuse and remix them, to set up their own badge courses, to use this in their professional development for faculty, whatever is useful. And one thing that might be particularly relevant for this discussion is that the course structure that we use for this MOOC is one that we at Blackboard have used for several of our own MOOCs. We think it's pretty straightforward but pretty effective. And if you download the course cartridge for this MOOC, either as a Blackboard course cartridge or as a common cartridge, you have a MOOC structure that you can use. You could go in and swap out our materials and put in your materials and not have to start from scratch. So we hope you'll take advantage of that opportunity, and that's it. Thanks.
All right, we have one more, and actually this, Luke is going to be coming up because part of one of the works that he had done as in WCT is looking at kind of this checklist. So are you ready to go and produce a MOOC? I have a question while Luke is coming up. How many of you have a MOOC? Well, I know Kay and Pat. Others. Oh, okay. How many are considering doing a MOOC? All right, after Luke does his short presentation, all our presenters are going to come back up here because the MOOC doctor will be in, and you can ask your questions about whether are you ready to proceed and what should your next steps be, what are some things that you need to consider. So Luke, all yours.
I hope you can hear me okay. I have a loud voice, but if you've noticed my behavior on the stage, I'm attempting to act like our students and be a mobile learner. So just a side note on it's a different world as a mobile learner. And I thought I was one because I had a smartphone and I had my email and my calendar tied into it. And then I entered this world of tablet and mobile learning. And I know we're not in a mobile learning session, but I'm experiencing life as a mobile learner in a completely different way. So just had to share that with you and tell you don't be afraid of the new stuff. I have a question for you, and because I really like audience participation. In Louisiana, we have large families, and so if you're the youngest child in large families, and my wife is the youngest of 7, you have to learn to shout to be heard. And so while I don't want you shouting at each other, I would like to know, why did you come to the conversation? I mean, I'm very interested in that. I'm also on the steering committee, so it piques my interest when people come into a room. What brings them in here? Are they like, hey, that's like, how do I respond to this question? Which is kind of where I'm at. Hey, and I share that challenge. But can a few of you share why you're here? Just shout it out. Go ahead.
I am just very interested in what the future of higher education looks like. So it's a very unsustainable model right now. And so I think MOOCs have this opportunity, almost like public service announcements, where anyone can just come in and learn and just for the sake of education, not necessarily have to be working towards something specific, but still get something very beneficial out of it.
Okay. We'll go here and then here.
I've never about viewed MOOCs as just about courses. I always many different kinds of things. It's immediate for me, professional development. Lots of people who are in them are not traditional students looking for credit. They're looking at pieces of knowledge. What else do you do? Like bridging the classes, they combine them with other things and remix and find lots of other things about things. Where will they go? I don't want to think courses. I want to think, what did this open up for us as a way to meet?
Great. And comment here?
Professional trade school, looking at that and was marketing on actually attending our program.
Great.
I don't know if we're ready yet.
Sure. Great. All right. And I hope someone's using their tablets and getting all these good ideas down. And did you have a point?
Just we're looking at getting some questions from our continuing non-credit. They think they want to get into the MOOC business. I'm having a little concern internally about the technology to support it.
Sure. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about may address some of your questions, and I'll take the last comment here.
We just released a study on the core motivation of faculty for getting involved in MOOCs. So kind of on the stump about MOOCs in general, and just want to absorb as many different conversations that happen.
Great. Well, thank you all. It's enlightening for me. Part of what we do at WCET is we, again, as I'm a mobile learner, we try to connect. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit about my own MOOC learning experience because I really believe, and this is threaded in all of the things that I do at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, that we first need to be students before we're teachers. And so I wanted to be a MOOC student. I think I'm a bad student until I came today, and my gaming friend, I'm inspired by you. Maybe I'm just an unidentified lurker. And so maybe I'm not bad, I'm just a lurker. And so I felt good that I was affirmed today that I was not a bad student because I really was starting to think I was a bad student. I've not completed a MOOC. I've tried to. And so hopefully you'll find this part of the not completion funny. I signed up for one on creativity, but forgot what email address I used. And so all of the emails are going to an email I don't ever check. So my first advice on being a MOOC student is I encourage you to be one. If you haven't been one, is make sure you sign up with an email that you check. If you have like multiple emails like me. And then the other thing is that I participated in the MOOC on badges, and I really liked the synchronous session. So I want to talk about my experience as a MOOC student real quick. I liked it. And so I identified when you said, hey, students want the synchronous, and I liked the all of the different options of engagement that you offered. I thought that was exceptional. So what's my purpose? Hey, said Luke, you're the boring part of the presentation. You're to come in and put a wrapper on all of the discussion, and so I'll do my best to live up to those expectations. Of course, I'm joking. How many of you have seen this talking points document? Okay, one, great. That means, or 2, 3, 4, 5. Not a lot of you have seen it. Has anybody used it at all? Good. All right. Well, then we've got either a critic or a fan in the back, and I'll invite you to be either. If you like it, I'll take all the credit. If you don't, my collaborator Mike Garn is here. He can take all the blame. So really quickly, here's what we were trying to do with this document with WCET. One is I'm interested in decision-making processes and sense-making of change and disruption. I want to know how it gets internalized. So Sally Johnstone, if y'all were here yesterday for the competency-based discussion, talked about how do we take what we're doing in competency-based and move it out? And I kind of feel the same way about MOOCs. How do we internalize it and what do we do? So we try to create a simple guide for the discussion, right? I don't know if you experience this at your institutions, but sometimes you can't be a prophet in your own country, and you need someone else to start the conversation or need some help starting the conversation. And so that's what Mike and I were trying to accomplish for a few reasons. One is, what's the context? If you're thinking about a MOOC, why? And if you can't answer why, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Or if you can't answer why, maybe you shouldn't be doing it yet. But I think that's a big question. And the second question, if you know why, then does it also answer this question? What problem is being solved by offering a MOOC? Now, all of this is on the talking points, and I'm not going to read it all to you, but just some, as I reviewed it myself, then we get to this. So that's in the issue of context. And that's what you see right there, the context. But then when you get to the issue of content, okay, the issue of content is, well, what topics? And then how are you going to create it? How are you going to deliver it? And then my favorite topic, this is my favorite topic of all, is cost. Because who's going to pay for it? Because I have a general assumption that we confuse open and free. And I was listening to you, and I think that's a common, I know this is more of an academic discussion, but I'm interested in having it with anyone that wants to have it. I think we confuse open and free. And in my opinion, nothing's free. Everything has a cost. There's a cost of time, and there's a real cost that these things run on. Someone's paying for the server, even if it's in the cloud. So what about cost? And what about student service expectations? And are we meeting those if we're trying to use MOOCs as a marketing tool? And what's the cost of failure? Is there a cost, or is there just learning? And then about enrollment and participant authentication and validation of learning. And that's the second or the third kind of sphere of our talking points document or our discussion document is, do we need authentication for MOOCs? Is completion even the goal? And then how will badges and credentials and other forms of completion be validated? How do we know that they have value? And is it only value to the person that receives them, or does the person want to really use that? I think there's some, as Mike talked about, some upstreaming of MOOCs, but is that really the goal of MOOC users? We don't know. Or is it just the providers? So I wanted to just review that with you and encourage you to, if you need to have a conversation on your campus, please use our document. And I'm going to pause for a moment and make a shameless plug for a couple of our common interest groups with WCET. One is around student authentication and academic integrity. And the conversation we've not had in our SIG about that is, how does that relate to MOOCs? And so if you're interested in that issue, I'm one of the co-chairs for that common interest group. I'd like to invite you to be engaged. And then I'm going to go to my colleague real quick. And do you mind to share with us very briefly, you used the talking points document, and I've got a few more comments I want to make, but I really want the audience participation. Was it helpful? Was it not helpful? And again, not helpful is Mike, and I'm helpful.
Actually, it was. I was thrown inspired. We received the tax-free grant, and by February 2015, by February 2015, we have to produce 3 MOOCs as part of the grant. So from now until 2015, I am like a maniac with my hair on fire. I am like trying to, I have a budget of 0 because with the grant, they gave money to everybody but me. So I am like running around trying to actually create a math MOOC, a credit for prior learning MOOC, as well as a basic employability skills MOOC. So one of the things I need to do is, okay, I'm always a backward design person. Okay, what's the end goal? And let's backward design it. And that actual document started those conversations where I can take it back to the director saying, I need definite answers in here, here, and here. Who do I actually go to? And so a lot of my thing now is going outsourcing. All right, which college can support me in this area? Which college can support me in this area? That kind of stuff. So I actually found it very helpful. I need a little bit more detail because I'm like moving through the process very quickly.
Well, maybe there's a second level of beyond the initial conversation that we can talk about. Right. So great. I appreciate you sharing. So here are some comments that have been made over the past few days that interest me, and I thought I'd share this with you. I asked the question yesterday of a very valued colleague who I didn't get that person's permission to share the comments, and so I won't attribute that to them. But I want to share with you what this person responded to or said to me in response to this question. I said, "What is the real impact of MOOCs on online learning as an industry?" And the response was that they saw MOOCs as a technological innovation and not really an innovation in teaching and learning. And so think about that. Is it just a technological innovation, or is it an innovation in teaching and learning as it is now? And what's its potential? Second, and this is the one I really connected with, is that the data that the MOOC platforms are harvesting, what's the ability to collect information about student behavior and then pour that right back into the teaching learning process. That was the innovation that this person really saw as the gift of MOOCs and their impact. And I have to say that excites me the most, and I agree. And then the final thing was, and this is a direct quote, the second is that I think we're going to have to lead the development of new technology to help us meet its scale. And so we think that MOOCs can give us a real template for how do we scale. How do we go wider and deeper with what we're doing in our own, maybe what we call traditional online courses. The last thought I'll end with is, I don't know how many of you read the Chronicle of Higher Ed. They've got this great tracking of it's a timeline of all their articles on MOOCs. But something came out a few weeks ago from a Coursera professor named Kevin Werbach. And he taught a course on gamification. About 150,000 people enroll, and he's into his third course of doing that. And I really was touched by this. I think it's one of the best articles that you can read. It's called "Don't Call Us Rock Stars." Did anybody read that? Okay, great. Then here's some high points from that. Again, direct words from him. It's in a form of a blog post. Reinforcing the view of MOOC instructors as rock stars is bad for professors, bad for universities, and most important, bad for students. And I think that connects to what your students were even seeing and saying in the comments that you were making earlier. Talk of rock star faculty members reinforces the static lecture model that MOOCs were, ironically, developed in part to destroy. And his final thought, and again, he has many very good thoughts that I encourage you to read, is the more a MOOC is defined as an expensively staged experience supported by an army of backstage roadies, the less risk-taking and pedagogical experimentation we'll see. And so, I don't think you got to have $50,000 to create a MOOC, all right? But I do think you have to have a team of really committed people that have a purpose and have answered the question why and are trying to solve a problem. And I'm done.
Maybe it was poor management of getting all of these different perspectives in one session. So at this time, I'm going to invite all of our presenters up because this is a time for you to ask questions and have a dialogue to help answer the question or help meet your need of why you are here or why you participated. Oh, and Mike, being his recalcitrant self, is going to stay down there. But that's okay. He has a big teaching voice, so he can, he has a big outdoor voice, rather. There's one more here. All right. Anybody have questions? If you have a question, come to the mic. That'd be great.
Mine is a very specific question to Deborah. You highlighted a bunch of the examples that you worked through, and you stopped before you got to John Jay. John Jay's in my neighborhood, so I'm curious as to what John Jay did.
We have a rock star author, and that one was faculty driven. That faculty person wanted to have a much broader reach for his specialty.
Okay. Right. So it was a known faculty member that's just doing a showcase his work.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Other questions? Well, I have one. So how does a MOOC differ from any other online course? Really?
Open. It's much more visible. I mean, someone made the point earlier about how faculty loves to see other faculty's courses. Typically, we haven't had a chance to see that. And so that's important for opening the dialogue with faculty. But it's also important for everyone to, I think that's why there's so many people who log in and don't ever complete assignments. It's just curiosity about what's inside that course box.
Micah.
Somebody said open over there as well. I think the ability to be able to join a class so easily, and then often, like we experience in our class, having really a global student participation base, we were able to see things that likely you aren't able necessarily to see in your local online classes, because often your local online classes or your face-to-face classes are filled with people within your service district. So one reason why I bring that up is I was taking a nutrition class, MOOC, and a really cool assessment was there. It was in the discussion boards, and it said, please take a picture with your phone or digital camera of the nutritional facts on the back of the foods in your country. And so for the longest time, I thought, wow, we've made some really great strides here in the U.S. to put those nutritional facts on the back, and it has good information that's going to keep us from, have us make more educated decisions about what we put in the body nutritionally. And I came to find out that there's many, many different iterations of nutritional facts and how it's designed in different countries and what they're looking for against what we're looking for. And maybe I was thinking so much about one specific way, like, wow, we do just a great job of this, but in fact, we might not be doing all that great of a job at all compared to what I see from a global audience. So the fact that more people were able to participate from all over the world and give me a much more well-rounded understanding, I think is really a nice application.
Do you want to go to the mic?
I have something to add to that, and I wanted to say it and I forgot. And that is, when our faculty got together to talk about the content, what they wanted to put into the content, they looked at a course we already had, the basic skills course, lowest level that we already had. And they decided that wasn't really what students needed for our purpose. And so instead of taking a 3 or 4 unit box and filling it, they were unfettered by the idea of a credit hour. So that notion of credit hour for this particular class, they could let go of that and say, we don't have to fill this 3 unit box to the maximum. We can really just focus on what students need in this particular chunk and do that. And it freed them. They had just incredible discussions about the topic they were presenting. And I think one of the things that was really great was they learned from each other what techniques they were using in their classes that they really, because they hadn't been in each other's classes, didn't know. And so they shared these techniques and these ideas, and just the process itself was so energizing for those faculty. So being outside of the normal development of a course type of constraint where you've got the curriculum process, you've got, someone telling you what standards it has to meet, and if it doesn't meet those standards, it can't be offered, and if it doesn't fit into this pattern, it can't be there, and, there's a lot of no, you can't do, and in this particular case, that was let go of, and we watched faculty blossom under that situation, and students too.
Hi. So I had just a question about student services. I know in the summer Udacity, tried to wrap around its the MOOCs at San Jose State, tutoring and some academic advising. So I almost think that moving forward, especially because I work for Cuyahoga Community College, and so I'm just thinking, if we were to offer MOOCs and we start getting larger and larger numbers of people, then will we have a duty then to provide additional student services? And as a community college, we're already, in some ways we are very strapped in terms of our ability to meet some of the, student services needs of our current students. So if our DevEd MOOC, where we got, grants funding, just like you guys did, I'm just thinking, well, how do we sustain, a model where we're actually creating, instead of a MOOC, we're creating almost kind of like maybe a massively open online support service, maybe MOS or whatever. So I guess I'd just like to maybe hear about, how can we, what might be needed to provide that level of support as we actually have more and more students enroll in the MOOCs that we offer. So.
You want me to take that?
Sure.
I started my career in student services, so the question's near and dear to my heart. I can answer it in a number of ways. I think it goes back to the question of why are you doing this and what problem are you trying to solve? And then you say, well, what supports are needed to solve the problem outside of the content we're delivering, the connections we're trying to make, okay? So I think you can come to the types of services through that level of questioning. The other question is, if you're like our friend here who's interested in saying, we want to show some of our product, then is that MOOC an extension of the experience you give other students on your campus in some shape, form, or fashion? Again, I know I'm answering a question with a question, but it's the type of discussions that have to take place. And the third thing that I would do, because especially for people like you, Kelvin, that are out in front, is I'd engage my accreditor. I'd say, I don't want you to come in and ask me after the fact. Work with me through these type of things. And there's not enough of that. We don't view our accreditors enough as our partners. And they are. They're our partners in trying to help us advance teaching and learning. And we've been very fortunate, Hay knows this, to have someone that works for an accrediting agency on our steering committee. And it's so enlightening when Karen talks about, like yesterday in the competency-based discussion, she gave a list of like 3 slides of issues. And I was like, those are great conversation pieces that they aided their campuses in having. So that's how I would approach that. And I don't know if y'all have something to add or not, but that's how I approach it.
I have a good thing and a bad thing. Which one should I start with? I think I'll start with the good thing. I think we've tried to build into the course resources so that if students weren't getting enough or they had questions, they could go to the resource links and there were things there that we hoped would help them. We didn't have we also actually had a resource about what to do next with a link to, and I can't remember the site, but there's some really good sites about planning your college education and planning your career and that. And we had links to those sites so the students could go find out more about where to go to school and what to do. So that was what we did. The reason we got 95 out of 100 in our Quality Matters review was because we didn't have student services available for the students at our own college. Well, we couldn't do that. I mean, we couldn't even have an email available to them because if we did, there was nobody to be able to handle that kind of volume. So that was an issue. The bad thing that happened is and I think I mentioned to somebody on having coffee that we had a group of 100 students from Mongolia being run by a Peace Corps volunteer there. And he was a great guy, but he didn't understand weighted grades. And so we were having to, we were exchanging email with him because once he emailed us and we found out what he was doing, we wanted to help him. But then he got all upset because he didn't think our grading was correct. And it absolutely was. It was weighted. He didn't get that. We tried to explain it, but he wasn't a mathematician. It was a mess. So he called our accrediting agency. Okay. Yeah, you want to talk about, oh my gosh. Anyway, he called them, and we had Jack Pond from the ACCJC call our accreditation liaison person who doesn't know anything about distance, too lovely, but doesn't know anything about distance education, didn't even look at the MOOC, really didn't know what we were doing. And So she wrote back, I don't know. He said, how are you handling complaints? And she said, I don't know. And she got all freaked out, and then called me, and then I went, oh my gosh, and we went back in and looked, and Coursera handles those because it's a Coursera course. So we were able to get back to him and tell him that, but it opened up a conversation then about how we were going to do this going forward with our accreditors. And Jack and Susan are amazing, and it was really pretty easy to talk to them about this and to clarify, but it kind of makes your blood run cold when someone calls and says, you have a call from ACCJC about your course. But we worked that out, and I think that's something going forward we're going to have to really, really have that conversation in depth. Take them into the classes, show them, ask them to come up with standards with us in collaboration. I think that's, if we're going to go forward, that's probably going to. Me too.
Cynthia, before you ask your question, I'll just add one more quick thing. I don't know if this would answer for all different types of student services. But one thing that I would really think this is a great platform to explore, especially with other potential emerging initiatives going on, would be the power of community. And the idea that there's a large community in those classes, and some of them are repeat community, and some of them might be empowered, like we were talking about before, from being just a lurker to a contributor to now a leader in helping out with certain types of maybe academic or learner support services. You see in a lot of communities, you look at communities that are working on that right now, like Yahoo Answers, where you have people that are just power answers or whatever, and they get a badge because they do that, but they're motivated. They're motivated by the sense of efficacy and participation. It might not be something that comes down from a paycheck on a payroll system, but the truth is they're motivated by other ways. And it comes back to the why that Luke pointed out. Are we doing this in the first place we want people to learn, and part of learning is to provide them some learner support, and if that's the case, can we do it in certain ways that don't need to be a top-down approach?
Hi, I just wanted to comment back on your question about the difference between online and a MOOC. At the exact same time, I was taking Pat's MOOC, first and only one I've done, and I did complete it. I was taking an @ONE course, also at the exact same time, and in addition, teaching 5 online classes myself. And my perspective was there wasn't any difference. I felt like it was the same thing as taking the @ONE course and several other online courses that I'd taken. There were a couple of little things, not having an email to contact somebody when I got frustrated. And then I decided, you know what, let me just post that into the discussion area. And actually, one of the TAs got back with me. It's too bad. I had missed a deadline, and I was a misunderstanding in the format. But I approached it as a regular class, like I was taking an online class for credit, even though I knew I wasn't. Everything was there, the lecture materials, reading materials, the videos, quizzes, assignments. Other than having other students grading my papers, I saw no difference. I thought it was a quality course, and not just because it was Pat's, but I compared it with my @ONE course I was taking in online classes that I teach, and I felt it was right there, being the same. And this is a student's perspective.
Thanks for sharing.
We'll pay you later.
John, did you have a comment?
First, I want to thank everyone on the panel. It's a great session. I've been following a lot of the comments and the follow-on tweets and discussions about MOOCs, and it appears that many of the MOOC providers that have larger funding are controlling the PR end of it. And wondering whether some of you, I know you're up to your busy making MOOCs, but there might be some way in which word of the things that you are doing could get as much visibility as some of the larger players that have a PR firm, other people supporting. So I wonder if you thought more about getting the message out to the successes you've had.
Is that directed to us or to Jay?
Yeah, we've been pretty much pretty tight little community. You know, we do a tweet chat and that goes out, and we have our own hashtag. And I guess we haven't been very much with everything else. We haven't thought much more about the publicity. This is our last iteration, and we're going to take a break then. So I think we will be able to have some time to get some more of that information out. And I'm going to say with Calvin's question, really, for me, I'm at a point now, we've done a MOOC. It's been successful. Now what? I'm really at that stage now because we got a community who know how to get online, to be really active people online. And what's the next stage now?
Just briefly, from WCET's standpoint, you know, we're member driven. We very much are a member driven organization. So if there's a need for us to take a greater interest in MOOCs and where do we go next and where have we been and where do we go next, then, you know, we need to hear that from you. And you can tell me afterwards. I'll stay and take tally marks because that's the kind of thing we want to know. Is it worth a common interest group or does it need to be a focus area? And what type of information do you want, need? How do you want to be engaged? And that's all the kinds of questions that we need to answer. You could even tweet hashtag WCET13 and tell us. So we're all monitoring that.
Yeah, so I was just going to say with regard to PR, so even though the Badges MOOC didn't have any monetary budget, we had the considerable resources available to us with regard to Blackboard, Mozilla, and WCET PR staffs. And so we did a lot of outreach with a lot of favorable impact in terms of you know, getting publicity, getting requests to participate in webinars and do articles in journals, conference presentations. And so we feel like an important part of what we've accomplished in the Open Badges MOOC is a lot of visibility in terms of that particular topic. And when we talk about Open Badges, we also talk about the open community of this MOOC. So that's, I think, useful not just for us, obviously, but also for the broader changing of perception of what MOOCs can be.
You know, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So I guess as we close, it makes me think that maybe the most important part of a MOOC, the massive open online community, is really the C, the community, that it's allowing us, as we go forward, it seems that each of our efforts have been individual campuses, individual organizations, but maybe this allows us to, as a community, provide some education, some instruction, training, that I'm of the belief that we're all good at something. So as a community, if we came together, could we help each other really revolutionize education? So on that note, I thank all our panelists and I thank you for participating. We're on to lunch. Thank you. Thank you. It was great. That was fun. I have to look at the book now. All right, so do I need to do anything? Oh, okay, perfect.